think we are ready to start our event today. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. And today we're going to be talking with you about ECM Modernization Personified, 4 content transformation success stories. I'm Teresa Resick, Vice President of Market Intelligence here at AIIM, and AIIM is your host and producer of our event today. And also joining us is Nugent Software. They are the underwriter of today's event, and we thank them very much for their support. And certainly thank you for taking the time to join us today. As we get started, just want to offer a few pointers for viewing our event. And actually, it's more than just viewing it. We want you to participate. We're going to be hearing some really great use case stories and a lot of really good explanation about all of that. So I do encourage you to submit questions as we go along, and because we are going to be taking your questions as they come in. So please use the chat feature, use the Q&A feature. Let us know what your thoughts are, and as you have them, share them, and we'll go ahead and bring them up with the speakers as we go through. I did mention the chat feature. Feel free to open that up right now. Let us know where you're listening from. And I always like to see where around the globe you are. In that chat feature, we will be sharing a link to download some really good resources that we have to share. And also in there, we'll be dropping a link in there a little bit later just to take a feedback survey. I always value the feedback that you give, and I do actually read everything that you post in there with every event. So I just look forward to hearing your thoughts on how we're doing today. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to AIIM.org's Resources Learning Center page in just a few days. So I just want to introduce the folks that we're going to be they're just going to be leading this discussion we have today. And we have Peggy Winton, and Peggy is the president and CEO of AIIM. And Peggy has years of programming, product, and business development experience, and she is responsible for the strategic, technical, and the business direction of AIIM. Peggy believes that every organization is on or should be on a digital transformation journey. And at the heart of this journey is the drive towards understanding, anticipating, and redefining internal and external customer experiences. Winton joined AIIM in 2002, and she enjoys a reputation as a persuasive and engaging communicator, a cross-functional team leader, and a public speaker and author. And because we did say we're very keen on the customer experience, joining us to share some of those stories is Anurag Shah, and he is the head of products and solutions at Nugent Software. And so I'm going to turn things over to Peggy right now to begin our talk today. Hi, Peggy.
Hi, thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for joining us. This topic about modernization of ECM and the new content services mindsets and tools, we presented this back in August, not too long ago, and it was so popular that we are just delighted to go a little bit deeper today on this topic and put some real context to it by sharing some real world customer examples. So we thank Nugent and the generosity of sharing that customer information with us. So, you know, modernization, we all know it's good, like knowledge. It's very, very good. But why? Why is it so important right now? Well, we've been talking about this at AIIM a lot. There are two pretty important drivers that have converged because of the events of the last 18 months. One is that just crazy mad rush to accommodate remote workers and remote work. The other is customer demand for availability and convenience and quality of the products and services that we provide. Both of those things are creating all kinds of new challenges for organizations, and they are adding to the information chaos. I think we could feel it ourselves and honestly say that most organizations are losing that battle. And this new awareness of that is exposing some pretty weak points in most of the information management strategies and ecosystems, the systems that are supporting those strategies. We've come to the realization that a monolithic system with a single content repository probably won't cut it anymore. It's really time to think of just outdated manual processes. So that's why we're talking about that here today. And that's exactly what went through the minds of the 4 organizations you're going to hear about today from a variety of industries. They realized this before making the commitment to switch to modern content services platforms. They found that these platforms are a lot more nimble, they're more agile, they're more easily deployed to drive innovation and drive that superior customer, both internal and external customer experiences. Their employees thank them as well. So before we dive into those stories, let's just do a brief review about what do we actually mean by modern content services. And this is a great time for me to ask you, Anurag, you obviously work with so many customers, and like many of our organizations, you're still supporting, maybe even propping up legacy ECM systems. So what do these typically look like in terms of functionality, or I should say lack thereof? What do they look like?
Yeah, I mean, Peggy, thanks a lot, first of all, for having me here, and welcome to all our viewers and audience. And you said it so rightly. Those 2 things that you talked about, especially looking at last 18 months going through the pandemic, that definitely has brought about those weak points in organizations across different industries. So coming to what are those new age, as we call, or modernization or digitalization, there are several ways those are being referred. What really are those? If we have to look at from the content and process modernization perspective, right? And if we just go back a decade earlier, maybe 10 years, maybe 8 years back, how those things used to be, if we look at, and how those are required in today's world, that will give us those perspectives. And I'm going to talk about maybe 5 or 6 points around those. The first and foremost comes the content, obviously. If you look at the traditional way of doing those, what we used to call document management or content management, in those in those years, the focus was mostly on managing the content, the documents, scanning, email, fax, those kind of things. When you move to the modern content services platform with process modernization built into it, now the focus has shifted on a pervasive utilization of content across departments, line of businesses, enterprise. And the shape and form or format of the content are ever evolving. Gone are the days when those were only documents and scanning and email. Today, I mean, we are right now here on a video webinar. There are Teams, Zoom, WebEx, with the working remote working from home, the pandemic, all of those things have brought new ways and new format and types of content. And then there is obviously those web, mobile, portal, social. So contents are coming all across. Now, again, you look at, if you go back and see how it used to be, there were a lot of human interventions in those years, working through those content, document and all. Now, those have given ways to technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, cognitive services. Those are the things which are now coming into the content and processes. We talked about paper-based documents giving way to electronic, email, social, and those things. And then it all used to be mostly internal workflows back in the years. So there would be workflows connecting different departments. Now those have transformed more into collaboration, extending your enterprise to the participants across outside of your enterprise. Customers are definitely important and integral part of it, but more than customers, are there your partners, agencies, bureaus participating into those? How are you collaborating and bringing all of those entities digitally? From the single, you talked about monolithic architecture, Peggy. I mean, from those single cohesive repository, we have now reached large scale federated repositories, multiple places, scattered content, how we can federate and go there. And it mostly used to be on-prem, which now has given way to cloud. A very, very important initiative on that. So those are the things, Peggy, I would say would be important to consider when we are looking at modernization and digitalization.
And you talked about, you know, it all used to be tidy in one little place. There's also an interesting movement that so much of the information that is needed, and it's usually the best information about the customer, doesn't exist it's not stored in a dedicated content repository. 54% of that is actually in the business application themselves. So we've got to really extract that, because that's where a lot of those gold nuggets are. And organizations and the users within them tell us that they really face the greatest challenge with chaos and dealing with it at the intersection of content and processes. And they say, Anurag, that simply managing the documents and content necessary for their colleagues, their knowledge workers, to get their jobs done is a real problem for that. So I was intrigued to learn about your customer, the Tennessee-based community bank. Again, they were able to integrate a lot of content into core business processes to create almost an end-to-end customer journey. And I'm curious to hear more about that. And I'm also curious to understand if they did any initial customer journey mapping, because a lot of AIM members recognize that and the value that can be gleaned from that, not just for a better customer experience and better content to process integration, but there's the whole governance piece too, to understand where a customer data may be collected and may be used there. So tell us more about this banking customer of yours.
Yeah, and Peggy, this is a great case study to talk about, and you rightly said marrying that customer journey into the digitalization objective with which the bank started, including content and process. So I'm going to talk. I'll certainly take a customer journey view as well. So to take a back step, the objective with which this bank, this community bank in Tennessee, the objective which they started this entire initiative was to achieve that true and real, in real sense, true digital customer experience. That was their objective. That how can we provide that digital experience to customer across channels? It does not matter whether my customer is engaging with me through my web portal, calling my contact center, walking into my branch. How can it be seamless and standardized experience across all? And in addition to that, they also thought of giving that personalized experience. Not they did not want to have one size fits all kind of concept. They wanted to really reach out to the customers on a personal basis. who is employed, who is doing business, small business, big business. So different profile of customers would have different needs and different ways to bank with them. So they started this journey, not journey. They started this digitalization with the deposit side of the line of business. So account opening for both consumer as well as small business profile of customers. I mean, the number of products and the offerings from consumer side were as many as 15 different types of accounts. So, and within business, there were about 4 or 5 different types. So you can imagine that with about 20 different types of account which are offered to the customer, and then that relates to different types of customer, different profile of customer, and that personalization, that's where it becomes important there. Now, as part of this account opening, irrespective of whether if I'm trying to open an account with this bank, I could go to the website, I could start online, I could download a form from the website, I could fill it in, I could walk into the branch, I could call the contact center, I could do all of these things. I could have it on mobile. So when I do that, few things which start the process, and this is where the customer journey starts moving towards the process. So as a customer, the first step is to initiate and apply. As part of that, maybe I will submit my driver's license. If I'm doing it through mobile, I could take a picture of the driver's license front and back. I could, it gets seamlessly automated. And then the system kind of reads those data from the driver's license. So I don't have to type in my name, my date of birth, my address, and all of those things are picked from the driver's license. It is populated. I can see that, yes, everything is picked correctly. If there are any changes, I could go and edit. And in the background with these information, the system does those ID authentications, ID verifications. So if I just take a pause here and see where are those contents making impact through the process in this customer journey. We collected this driver's license, we gathered certain data, we went to certain maybe agencies, bureaus, checking systems, duplicity, fraud, OFAC. There are different databases through which those are done. There are different systems through which those ID authentication verifications are done. While the customer is still online engaged, those things are done. And when I go to the next step where there are disclosures, which are required to be presented to the customer. So this, based on the type of the customer, relevant disclosures are automatically generated on the fly at the runtime. Again, another content produced in the journey of the customer. It is provided to the customer as electronic to do the electronic signing, DocuSign and those kind of things, where nobody has to download anything. So those things are done. So content generation, content presentation, content electronic signature, and all of these things when are done, and if everything is good and there are no discrepancies, the data collected, everything goes back to the core banking, customer is created, account is opened, customer sees that here is my customer ID, account number, and my welcome kit is on the way, and I'm good to go. And I'm able to select what all services I want to have. I want to have check, book, debit card issuance, all of those things electronic. So if you really see in a happy path, the customer journey starts from any of the channel and it ends with the successful opening account. Now, not all journeys are happy and smooth. There may be certain discrepancies. Maybe you found some duplicity. Maybe this customer is coming back again and it already exists and somebody has to look into that. Or maybe the data which came in during ID authentication, verification, OFAC, fraud, risk, all of those things, you found something and somebody has to look into it. At that point in time, it should not be a break in the journey. The customer is presented with a friendly message that we have collected your information. There are a couple of steps which we are doing. We will get back to you. If the customer has engaged on mobile, the system will say that we'll get back to you on your mobile or on a call or whatever, email. And in the meanwhile, the application comes to a back office or front office or branch office, howsoever the bank is organized. It goes to somebody's queue, somebody does whatever they have to do, resolves it, and it goes back to the customer. So again, the journey resumes and it continues. So irrespective of happy or discrepant path, the journey, the engagement remains consistent. And after the account opening was successfully done, now the bank is starting with another initiative, which is the commercial loan origination. With the success of the account opening, the bank is now adding commercial loan origination. The bank is accounting the SBA part of the loan origination. And already we are discussing to implement consumer loan origination next year, combined with service request management, cross-selling, upselling, campaign management. So you see, it is not only a content and a modernization and a digitalization, but it is to do with creating a platform, a backbone for the bank, where more starting from one, you can go 2, 3, 4, multiple line of businesses, multiple customer engagements and processes. So that's the kind of thing which we have done with this bank, and it is really a great case study from customer service, customer engagement, and a journey perspective.
Well, there are a lot of lessons to be gained for that. We always say that digital transformation is about making life easy for your customers, or making it so easy to do business with you. And I always think that relates to the product or service that you're providing to them. Does it simplify or enhance their life? But also the delivery. And you've just described a delivery process that is pretty darn easy and pretty darn convenient. So thank you for that. Let's talk about some of the backbone and some of the realities that are existent in a typical modernization process, and that's migration. We all know that so many of our organizations are hybrids. We've got legacy systems coupled with new, so much more user-friendly and intuitive, very specific business applications. Migrations are a necessary part of this whole modernization process we're talking about as technologies advance. And I would say, hello, customer-facing applications, because then again, that's where a lot of the innovation is coming from. That's where our line of business owners are really pushing for us to do things differently. Legacy systems clearly become outdated and they become really cumbersome. Little commercial for AIM. In our new AIM Plus portfolio, our whole new learning library, we do have some really good assets about how to create and execute a successful migration plan. So you want to check that out. And we cover all those factors that you consider around various formats. You mentioned that with the previous client, Anurag. Data quality you have to deal with, and of course, processes. So our next example is your customer that is a US-based holding company that owns and manages a lot of legacy information that they acquired from other entities. And isn't that a commonplace? And this has to do with variable annuity business information. So explain how the client automated more than 100 business processes and functions and migrated 40 terabytes of content. That seems like a huge undertaking.
Yeah, I mean, this is another interesting automation that we did for this customer. So this customer is in, like you said, in a business of managing the closed block variable annuities portfolios. So what they do is they go out to these insurance companies, they buy these portfolios, which are closed block for the policies. And then they run the service request management and operations to do, if you hold a policy, life insurance policy or any kind of policy for any, with any insurance company, what you would do is time and again, either it is a financial contribution which you regularly send, or there are administrative changes, you are moving address change, maybe beneficiary change, or maybe you are doing some claims, or maybe you are taking certain loans out. So there are number of processes, and that's where those, actually it is more than 150 different workflows which were which were there.
Wow.
So when they acquired this portfolio, as part of the acquisition, what came to them were 2 legacy applications, 4 different repositories of content amounting to about a couple of 100 million documents, those 40 terabytes that you talked about. And of course, the number of workflows which were being managed to serve the policy holders as customers or their producers and agents on their behalf were about 150 odd. So those are the legacy which they acquired as part of this block acquisition. Now, the objective of this company was to transform this entire operation into a digital policy servicing, which would enable ease of use through a digital delivery, through a self-service, through an automated fraud alert and all of those things, with omni-channel engagement across a variety of interactions, web, chat, electronic delivery, email, fax, traditional paper continues. Now, taking a step back, if you look at any of the insurance industry's situation, the life of the policy, if you see that the policy is living for last 20 years, 25 years, 30 years when the policy was issued, and it may continue to live for another 10, 15, 20 years, depending on how long the policy life is, right? In these 10 to 30 years, there would be hundreds of interactions that an insurance policy holder would do with the insurance company for multiple reasons. And in those interactions, contents are exchanged, communications are exchanged, data are exchanged. It may so happen that 5 years back, there was a nominee change which was done. And today I'm trying to make some changes in that, which relates to what I did 5 years back. The problem comes when today my insurance company starts asking me all of those things which I had already provided and spent maybe a week 5 years back, and I'm going to repeat all of those things. Now, you talked about migration. As part of this initiative, when we migrated those 4 legacy repositories content 40 terabyte into news and content services, the customer and we collectively decided that, look, we should not be just migrating it as is. We should bring in certain intelligence. We should bring in certain taxonomy so that the historical content, which are about 20, 30 years old content in the last 20, 30 years, when there is a new service request from the customer, in the context of that service request, in the context of that process, if any of the historical content becomes relevant, the system should be intelligent enough to suggest those to me as a customer service advisor to be able to service the customer more efficiently, frictionless as much as possible, and utilize what I already have. So we did those. We included artificial intelligence. We included certain type of extraction, certain type of taxonomy. And with those, we migrated those entire thing. And all of those were done in flat 4 months, the entire migration. Those 150 workflows, again, we looked at that. We worked with the customer, and we embarked on a journey where we said that it is just cumbersome way of managing 150 workflows. Let us rationalize it. Let us simplify it. Let us optimize it. And collectively, we then brought those 150 into 13 optimized, what we call in today's world, business process management processes, BPM processes. And that's where all of those were done. And from start to finish, the entire 150 workflows transformed into new ways content and process modernization in 8 months, with 2 weeks of stabilization period, and they were up and running like that. So that's the kind of the transformation which we achieved there.
So let's talk about some of the tools used in that process, because it sounds almost like magic. We've already said that it's a lot of the process owners at the front lines with their customers that are really driving a lot of the most impactful content-driven initiatives. And that has been a pretty big push behind what's known as low-code platforms that allow organizations to improve those business outcomes of all kinds of work, not just structured or repeatable business processes. But I think there's some confusion around low code because it's often referred to in the same breath as citizen developers. And what you've just described sounds a lot more complex than that. And while line of business owners may want to be empowered to do more and do more themselves with sort of self-service kinds of things, pretty sophisticated programmers welcome this as well. So you've got another client, Anurag, that's a Fortune 500 healthcare payer. They automated multiple core processes, but they specifically used low code in that process. Can you describe what low code is in your terms, and then tell us a little bit more about that program? We've got 5 minutes max for this customer, and I definitely want to make sure we get to the last customer before we take questions.
Thanks for keeping me on time. I'll try to be quick here.
There's a lot to talk about.
In a very nutshell, if I have to say what is low code, I would like to differentiate low code from application development to meeting those mission critical business processes which are impacting your customers, which are impacting your partners, which are impacting your internal employees. Now, they say that a great customer experience starts from a great internal employee experience. What kind of experience you are giving your own employees when they are interacting with systems and contents and processes. Those are the things that experience is going to translate and transform finally for the customers by those employees. So when I look at the low code, it starts from those internal and goes to external. So connecting the front with the back from all the engagements, all the processes and all. Now, coming to this specific client, this is a Fortune 100 company. It's a large one. It's a mega one, which it's a health plan, which has about 24, 25 million members, works across 50 states. And to serve those many members, they have in their network more than 1 million contracted providers, the hospitals, the nursing homes, the clinics, and all of those. And they provide those government-sponsored managed care services primarily to Medicaid, Medicare Advantage, Medicare prescription drug plans, and so on and so forth. Now, in this organization, you talked about multiple core processes. So they started with provider contracting. Their main objective with that start is to be able to engage with the providers, onboard the providers, and make them ready for the members when the members need them. So the objective was all for the digital and superior experience for the members, because members would go to a health plan only because they want with an intention of having better provider services, better doctors, better treatments, and those kind of things. Now, to do that, this provider contracting thing was so cumbersome. It used to take about a few months. I mean, that's the turn time that they were having. It required those 200 to 1,000 pages, depending on how big or small doctor is, providers, facilities or hospital is. If you have to contract and credential each one doctor there, their demographics, their qualifications, their expertise, facilities within the hospital. So you can imagine all of those things with the relevant documents associated with that. So that's where we started. We completed that successfully. And then the health plan kind of understood the power of the platform, which I talked about earlier. They embarked on another journey, which is appeals and grievances, complaints, appeals and grievances, which kind of touched all the participants of the health plan, starting from providers to members to pharmacies, whosoever are interacting, the claims or the appeals can be logged by the member, by the pharmacy for the drug, by the provider on their claims. So all of those. So all of those interacting. And then when those appeals and grievances come in or complaints come in, there were more than 10 different departments who, depending on type of the complaints and appeal, were required to work upon that, to act upon that. So that's the complexity. It kind of integrated with the systems which had the records of members, which had the records of providers, which had the records of claims, which had the records of all your codes that you use in the healthcare. So all of those systems were integrated with it. So we did that, and then we went into Medicare enrollment, we went into provider credentialing, configuration. So number of processes we did. Again, this is a classic case of starting with one digital transformation, moving into another and touching several different line of businesses, bringing in content, bringing in process, bringing in portal, bringing in digitalization. So I'll stop here considering the time. I mean, I can go on this, but I'll just stop here considering the time.
But what kind of skill level is required to use the kind of low code capabilities that you've described? What are we talking about?
Yeah, so, and that's where the mission, when we look at the mission critical processes, there are two, I would say, primary skills that we generally need. One is from the business perspective, because we want to empower the business people to kind of be able to configure those processes, configure those rules, configure those business logics into the process. But those are only half done until it interacts with your underlying systems, underlying core policy systems, underlying core backend applications. And that's where your IT, your professional services come in. Be able to integrate using web services, modern web services. If you have antiquated systems, then be able to go to those antiquated way of doing. If not, then maybe bring in robotics, RPAs to do those integrations. So the data exchange across, and in typical health plan organization, if you see, you would see not less than 10 to 12 different major core applications which really hold a lot of system of records which participate into these processes. So bringing those data into the process is something which we work with IT and that department to provide. And once those data and information are available into the process, that's when the business people with analytic skills are able to say that, okay, here is my member information, here is my provider information, here is my claim information. I have all the information. I don't have to go to 10 different systems to look for it. I have it here. Now let me see what process I want to build, what automation I want to achieve. So that's where I would differentiate between those two skills. Obviously, there are many more, but primarily these are the two skills that I see in any low-code based transformation.
So that's really useful. It's embraced by both IT and the business alike. But to do the kinds of things you're talking about, you can't just walk in off the street and use that. I think that's a good distinction, and it's a clarification that is out there. So, Anurag, we've obviously talked about the fact that many document driven, because we're talking about a lot of document driven business functions here, they've kind of reached, or they're about to reach, their tipping point for automation. And that's really the point where automating those processes is absolutely critical to accomplishing what our customer expect with high quality and in a timely manner. And you already talked about it, and you made the point that because organizations are receiving documents through a variety of delivery channels, we all know that, and it's only getting more diverse. Automating how the work moves through an organization to support all kinds of key business processes, particularly for a demanding customer base, is no wonder that's at the top of the list of AIM members. So the last customer I want you to talk about is a Fortune 500 food and beverage company, and they streamlined their end-to-end contract lifecycle management. Tell us about that in about 3 minutes, and we'll get to 1 or 2 questions. No, that's fine. We're right on time here. So food and beverage company, the contract lifecycle management. That's really interesting. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, and see, this is again Fortune 500, a very large food and beverage company, and they were having thousands of suppliers. Vendors, suppliers, and geographically scattered across different countries with different languages. Now, more than contract lifecycle management, their objective of this entire digital transformation was to be able to serve and manage those suppliers and vendors to their satisfaction. And they were having vendors to deal with in English, Chinese, Thai, Arabic, Vietnamese, you name, French, Spanish, all of those languages in different parts of the world. Now, the problem that they were facing, because there were thousands and thousands of suppliers, those many were the contracts. Each supplier will have its own contract. Within each contract, there will be certain clauses. They were having this cumbersome way of managing the templates of the contract, and then within templates, individual clauses. They had absolutely no way of tracking that. If as a corporate, if I change a clause, is it going into my 1,000 contracts when those are impacted? Is any change in the clause making any impact when it is to be renewed and in the next year, or the clause is compliance regulated and it must go into effect immediately as a mass amendment to all my suppliers? So those were lack of visibility, multiple versions, no integrity, turn time were like unbelievable turn time. So those were the pain points with which they started. Now, as part of the process, this digital transformation of contract lifecycle management, not only we took care of the clause building, template building, assimilating those into a contract, but also we enabled them to collaborate with the partner, with the supplier. They were able to send the contract. The supplier was able to do the redlining like you do in Microsoft Word in track change, send back. It would come into the system. Each change was tracked. And depending on the section of the contract, the system would route those changes to the respective department. If it is legal, finance, operations, HR, admin, different clauses would relate to different departments. Those will go there. Each one will see those changes, would be able to accept, reject, provide more comments. At the end of it, again, combine everything, go back and send to the suppliers. So the entire interaction, collaboration, and contracting was done digitally. Not only that, if there were any changes required, whether it was required mass amendment or it was to be done at the renewal, when is the renewal to be done, when is some contract getting expired, all of those things were taken care of. So this is a true case of, where electronic, and there were no paper which was getting printed or scanned. This was all electronic data, but in the absence of a platform, those electronic data was living in Microsoft Word files on a file share, exchanged through email, and that was the problem which we solved.
And that leads to one of the questions particularly when you were talking about the annuity company and migrating 40 terabytes of content. I think one of the listeners was curious, where were you migrating from for the most part, and where were you migrating to? You mentioned Microsoft, you've mentioned some other things. Can you share that, or was it just all over the place? Yeah.
Yes, I mean, it had 4 repositories. I said the biggest one of the 4 was IBM CMOD, from where we migrated to news and content services. The other 3 repositories were file shares, databases, and some scattered folders.
Okay,
And I mean,
that's great.
if you have worked and used IBM CMOD, you would know that the format with which it comes is a AFP format. So we not only migrated, but we also converted those AFPs from CMOD into individual PDFs. I talked about those artificial intelligence based intelligence, which we included into the migration. And there was a partner which was working with us, our global system integrator partner, with whom we kind of included those, not only converted those into PDFs, but also included those intelligent taxonomy, intelligent search mechanisms, so that in future those can be presented into the context of the process that I talked about.
You mentioned with the last customer the use of templates for some of the forms. Do you see the development and just incredible power of AI actually eliminating the need for templates going forward?
Well, I mean, yes and no. In this specific use case, yes and no. Of course, we can let go of as a technological advantage, the way artificial intelligence, and if you combine that with machine learning, the way those are, for example, if I have to quickly take one invoice processing as an example, which we do for several of the shared service centers. In invoice processing, gone are the days when we used to define the templates, and then we used to extract data from respective XY coordinates, so-called zones. Now we are doing artificial intelligence and machine learning based free format extraction based on the legends and trying to understand which is invoice number, what is what. So yes, in technological advancement, maybe in few years from now, those all clauses and templates could become a free flowing. But for now, because these clauses are managed by respective departments. So finance clauses would be managed by finance departments. Legal clauses would be managed by legal department. Operational clauses, administrative clauses, pricing clause, and then there are regulatory clauses. Those are the reasons why those sections must remain with those departments for now. But yes, in future, the possibility, Peggy, like you said, definitely exists.
Yeah. Well, we are, believe it or not, we are right up against our ending time. And I want to thank Anurag Shah and his wonderful team at Nugent for sharing this information. I think the moral of the story is this stuff really works. It works across a variety of industries. And if we can give any kind of assurances to those of you who are listening, as Anurag described, you don't have to boil the ocean all at once. Start with something that's not trivial, but is doable and approachable. The customer journey mapping and the customer experience should be top of mind, and then iterate and go from there. So even you can do that, and we'll make sure that you have access to all of these materials. I know that the chat feature has asked you to complete our survey and manage all these materials. So we've got one last slide for you to look at, and this is what the infrastructure looks like. This is where the magic all happens. Do you want to take just a minute, Anurag, and just walk us through this?
Yeah, sure. I'll be quick on this. In fact, we covered this in our last August one as well, but just as a recap, I mean, if you look at it right from the bottom, the first layer you see is a content services Omnidocs. That's where we say all our content reside. And then there is this communication services, which kind of engages with your customer in the choice of the channel that the customer wants. On top of that, you add those business process automation, where all those 150 workflows that I talked about in one of the annuity case, all of those gets implemented. And if you combine both of these, the content, the processes, and the communication, it gives you that low-code application development framework in which you are able to, I talked about bringing data from multiple applications, presenting those data to the business people with the skill set of analysis and analytic, who are then able to design and configure those low-code based, in low-code framework, those processes. And then there are those intelligence, those automations, those analytics, which comes as output of all of these implementation. giving those multi-experience user interface across industries, be it financial services, government, insurance, health plan, shared service center, all across. And it obviously on the top, you see, I talked about the great experience starts with the employees. So obviously employees are important, but customers remain the focal point of your total transformation objective. But don't forget your partners, the partners who contribute, whether they are agencies, bureaus, or whosoever in financial or insurance. There are several external partners who contribute. And on the side, if you see integration, we talked about on the left-hand side, to bring all of those data really with an objective of unifying everything into one. And on the right, we say that cloud, because we have seen working remote and how cloud has helped in last 18 months. Obviously, cloud becomes important. So that was a quick snapshot of the infrastructure, which has helped all of these four customers. And all of these products, if you see, are well recognized in the likes of Gartners and Forresters and Aspire. And these recognitions are existing since last about 13, 14 years, consistently year after year. What that tells you is the product is evolving, innovating every year, continuously being contemporary, trying to be thought leadership, trying to look into the future. And that's the reason these are existing in these analyst reports.
Congratulations. And it's a resource to help carry people along and get them there faster. So thanks again. Thank you, Anurag. Thanks so much. You all have been a fantastic audience. There are so many resources. Please take advantage of them at AIIM and through our partners. So with that, we will see you next time. Be sure to watch your emails and visit AIIM.org for our next lineup of things. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.